next panel with Monika Pałosz from Six More Vodka. It's like our after party. Storytelling in concept art.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Monika Pałosz, and I am a concept artist. Right now, I'm working, for the past couple of years, I've been working in Six More Vodka studio that's located in Berlin. And what we do, I'll talk about it like in a couple of seconds. But first, let me start with a story. 2 years ago, I was in Krakow. I remember, almost to the day, I was in Krakow visiting my family. And I got this call from Konrad, who just had his talk. I don't know if he remembers, but I was supposed to, you asked me if I can have a talk on the next day instead of somebody else who couldn't make it. It was a completely different event, but apparently every art-related event in Poland has Konrad pulling strings from behind the curtains. So, yeah. But I told him back then that I have nothing to talk about, nothing to show, because it was supposed to be the next day. I wasn't ready. So I promised him next time. So this is the next time. Thanks, Konrad, for inviting me here, kind of giving me this possibility to share. Funny thing is, I also used to come to Digital Dragons back in the days where it was held in the old depot. And I would never expect that I would have a chance to share with people from the other side of the mic. Nice. It's 4:05. Good timing. All right. So, Six More Vodka. It's a very small concept art studio. As I said, it's located in Berlin. We specialize in character design, character illustration, everything evolving around characters. Our clients from way before also I started working there include Guerrilla Games. The studio worked on Killzone Mercenary, among other things, and maybe you know this game. Also Ubisoft, Warner Brothers, Marvel, Valiant, Sony, and many other clients used to hire Six More Vodka for their services. This was, for example, made for Ubisoft back in the days. So we have this one department that, so the entire studio is right now divided into departments. One is responsible for client work, and the other develops our own projects, our IPs. The most prominent one to this day is called the Genesis. It's a pen and paper role-playing game right now, although we did some live-action trailers. It's set in a far future, in a post-apocalyptic world. And these images have never been shown before because this book is being released today. Every once in a while, once the team is ready, we release a new book with a new story to play, so you can get it and have fun with it. It's gonna be amazing. No, really, I think it's the best book we've made so far, although I didn't really have a chance to contribute to it. As I said, we have 2 teams. One of them is focused on client work, which right now means that we are working with Riot Games on some League of Legends stuff, and that's basically what I do every day. But let me go back a couple of years where I started. This was my first job. That's how I started to work as a concept artist. And as a character designer, basically, in a studio called Artifex Mundi. Back in the days, they had an office in Krakow, and since I was in Krakow, I got the job there. From the very first day, I was hired to design characters for their hidden object puzzle adventure games. It was a very steep learning curve, as this was my first job, and in the beginning, I must admit, I didn't really know what I'm doing. I'm sorry. I was just trying my best to make these games look the best they can. And I had a lot of help from my friends, from the art director, who's also here. Yeah, I did lots and lots and lots of concept art. I was just getting all the ideas for all the characters out there on the paper. My next job after Artifex Mundi was working on a 3D animation with Platige Image in Warsaw. It was also character 2D graphics related. I'll talk about it later on. It's still not out. It's gonna be out soon. But since I can show you guys some of that stuff that I did, I'm gonna do just that. I also, well, over the years, I was hired over and over again to do character work, and since I like to draw, and money cannot hurt, then I said, okay. This is one of the animations that I worked on. This is concept art for a card game, actually, for a pitch. Then I think it was funded. It was called Songs of Artha. So yeah, as I said, I did tons and tons of different concept art related and also illustration work. Recently, I've been doing comic book covers for Valiant. So, yeah. Drawing characters for years come in handy when you have to draw 20 of them in one image. Okay, let me start with this first point, that is animation, which for me is a very, very story-driven production. Probably most story-heavy thing that I've ever worked on. As everything I'm designing in an animation is built around the story. It serves the story. The story is the most important thing in the entire product. When the story sucks, the beautiful art won't really save it. So I just need to do my best to really support the initial idea and the director and everybody working on it to just try to make something that people will enjoy in the end. So in the animation, we basically, I can use this here. In an animation, we get the script, and the script defines what we are going to design. We don't really have to, of course, it's useful and we often do it, but we don't really have to design much outside from what's going to be shown in an animation. This was a pitch I was working on back in the days. I was hired, I've never done anything like that before, and I was hired to design a look for an animation so that it gets funded. And the title was Dziewczyna z lasem, which I can, I think, roughly translate to a girl with lasso, although the working title back in the days were Cowgirl. And what I've got was this entire script and story that is going to be, of course. And I knew that it's an adventure story for kids. So designing the main character, I was trying to make it fit the best to the best of my possibilities. And also the people who were working on it, I was working with Grzegorz Wacławek. He had a lot of ideas on how I can design the main character. One of the tasks were to design the frames for the animation. So here, yeah, okay, let me tell you briefly what this is about. So the girl grows up loving Old West, Wild Western stories. But one day she discovers that her father, who she really looks up to, isn't really leading this old school cowboy lifestyle that she believed he does. He actually, instead of a ranch, he has a meat farm. So she's kind of disappointed and angry at him. And she frees one of the cows and sets off on an adventure that really reminds us of this old school cowboy type of journeys that they used to lead through. They used to lead their cattle through the entire West, through the entire country. So this is the type of story that was Dziewczyna z lasem. Here, knowing that, now I had to design the personal space, the girl's room, the little girl's room. I really enjoy doing this sort of stuff, as I believe rooms reflect people's personalities. So I could come up with all those little details that is like horse drawings and sheriff badge drawings and all this stuff, like a horse figurine on the shelf or a cactus on a windowsill. And she made her bike to look a little bit like a horse. So she attached some tail strap to the back of the bike to make it look like a horse tail. The bike pedals are saddle stirrups, and basically the seat is a saddle, like tiny saddle. So yeah, the entire story is about her journey in the modern world, but her imagination. We are kind of seeing it through her eyes, so it all looks like a Western, basically. The project that I mentioned before, Another Day of Life, that was a completely different animation. It's also an animation, it's a 3D animation based on a non-fiction novel about Angolan civil war, written by a reporter, Ryszard Kapuściński. It was directed by Raúl de la Fuente and Damian Lenov, and my art director at the time was Rafał Wojtunik. So, yeah, as I said, it is a 3D animation. The trick here was to make it look like a 2D animation. Since it was set, so everything was kind of figured out for us. The story was there. We knew that it's in the plot is set in 1970s. So all the fashion sense, the bell bottoms, all the colors were all there. I spent hours looking at pictures of fashion from those years, and then I got also tons of photo references. So basically the characters in the entire animation were almost all of them were real people at some point. So it was really fascinating to design those characters, because some of them I got an actual photos of those people, black and white and very low definition, but still. It was quite a responsibility to reflect something like that in an animation. So yeah, we started also with trying to design how the line will behave. They really spent a lot of time figuring out how to design it best so that it actually looks like a 2D animation. I was working closely with Rafał to design this stuff. The main character is, of course, the Ryszard Kapuściński, the reporter, the journalist. We also have some retrospection moments in the entire thing. So one of the things that I helped designing was the colors and the mood. from his memories. So we had to choose if they are happy memories or more moody memories. What did he see back in the days? It was really actually interesting because we had to draw like this secluded cottage type of house in the middle of the field with snow still lying in the field. Kapuściński was a journalist, so of course part of his work was to talk to people who didn't really want to talk to him. So hence some of the scenes are kind of, at least for me, it reminded me like those noir scenes with the back alleys and very sharp light and two silhouettes that look kind of shady. So basically, in animation production, as I mentioned, the story is usually figured out before the designing and concepting phase, and everything is there. I just kind of have to draw it and make it look nice. But what if we actually use the story as a selling point by our own? Because that's when the real fun begins, for me at least. I mean, I love working on animation. It's one of my favorite type of projects. But it's a rare case, actually, of having a story and everything around figured out for me. Most of the time, I'm having fun with my own stories if I get a task or a job to do, and there is a little description, or at least not enough for me. I build the story around the character when I'm designing it, and I'll show you how I do it later. Because building a story on our own, I think, helps with designing and makes a concept more believable. It gives me a purpose when I think of a story and I know what is this character, what's he gonna do, or what did he used to do. I know what kind of stuff he would wear, how he would look like. Maybe he would have a scar and stuff like that. It also works the other way around. If you have a character that's very standard, and you kind of know how he's supposed to look like when you have to design a mage or a rogue for a tabletop game, a tank, or someone like that, building a story around an archetypal character helps you make it a little bit more unique. So these guys, this is one of my personal projects that I developed on my own in my free time. I also draw characters in my free time. I've never seen these so big, actually. Huge. So of course, it's different when I'm coming up with something by myself, because I'm building basically from zero to I have to come up with the entire description and entire backstory. I actually like to make these characters kind of interact with each other, because that helps me to imagine what kind of people they are. And drawing them, I always give them a very, sometimes not very unique stance, but for them it's very descriptive, I believe. So the first guy on the left is, of course, a very tough guy, a kick-ass type of character. The lady in the middle is very, I think, kind of mysterious or maybe tricky. You don't know if you can really trust her. She has this mysterious smirk on her face, and she's a little bit hunched. Somehow hiding something also, because her clothes are kind of loose. And the chick on the right, she's kind of like mysteriously looking into the space, and also, so she has this very relaxed stance, but on the other hand, she has army type of augmentation for a hand, so maybe she also is kind of badass and she kicks asses. So yeah, this is my own personal brief, the things that I think about when I'm coming up with things. I never write them down. I actually had to retrospectively write down what I was thinking about when I was drawing this guy. So I was thinking that he's this kind of shady smuggler type of character. Of course, shady and untrustworthy. He's wearing those baggy clothes to hide items that I don't know, he might stolen something from some grandma or something. The kind of character that you get in contact with if you need something that's not really legal. Also a bit absent-minded and a little bit crazy. I imagine him talking his own language that nobody understands, maybe Russian. So yeah, but so I think I'm the only person who kind of gets overboard with posing the characters. I always, the first thing I draw in a character is actually the pose that reflects its personality. So for example, this one is kind of over-exaggerated. It's not really, doesn't really have much of a production value because we cannot see clearly how he looks like. He should be kind of a bit more straight up for that. I remember one day I had to design something and I actually drew a character from behind because I believed this is the best reflects his personality, and well, the client didn't really like it. So I learned my lesson. This is one of the concepts I was working on in Artifacts Mundi for Nightmares of the Deep, a hidden object adventure. I believe. These were a very unique thing for me to do again, because I had to design a character, but the final product, the final illustration was supposed to show up in the game. They were like animate, they give us things, they talk to us in the game. So this is what basically was shown in the final game. But it was really helpful to get very distinct briefs and descriptions for all of these characters, and it helped me to build an entire group of very different people that are characters by themselves, and you cannot really mistake them for one another. It was I really love this sort of thing, so it was very fun for me to do. As I mentioned, even if I have those more archetypal characters, like here is like this was designed for the card game Songs of Artha, and I was tasked with designing some low armor archer types of characters, beasts, I would say. So of course I made them a little bit more shady and slimy, and since they were supposed to be agile, so I drew them with bent knees so they can dodge in any second. Of course, very, very thin, they are carrying bows, so they don't have to have a lot of muscle on them. The other row shows a kind of like a leveled up character from the first row. So I made them stand up straight a little bit. They were more mage type of characters, so a little bit more mysterious. One hand is kind of hidden behind the cloth or something, which makes us make them look also shady and untrustworthy, because we just don't know what's behind the cape, what he's doing with the other hand. And the other hand is doing some magic, because it's a mage, so. Of course, playing around with poses is all fun, but it's not always what's needed and what's asked of a concept artist. This is also a lot of the work that I had to do was just draw very clearly, very as simple as possible, because these were sent to a 3D artist to make a 3D model of it, for example. So in these cases, I have to kind of sacrifice the personality for clarity. So I think I made it clear so far that for me stories are a really important part of my concept art work. Let me talk briefly about drawing concept art. I know it's stating the obvious, but everything that I've shown so far, it's drawn, it's hand drawn, as opposed to photo manipulation and this sort of stuff. I think I'm drawing because I'm kind of too lazy to do any other thing. I think a couple of years back, I tried to learn a little bit of photo manipulation to maybe add some tricks for my concept art portfolio. And I signed up for this online course. I think it was CGMA, Antoni Eftekari matte painting course. For any of you guys, if you don't know what's matte painting, it's this sort of work, photo manipulation type of work that you do that ends up in the final movie shots. For example, the backgrounds. If you don't want to model the castle in the background, you can really neatly manipulate pictures to make it look super real. And I really wanted to learn that, but I spent 2 or 3 days looking for a perfect picture of mountain. And I was like really itching for actually, can I just draw the mountain? No, of course not, because it's supposed to look realistic. So that's how I realized that really drawing is my thing, because I can just open up Photoshop and just draw the mountain. I don't have to spend hours looking for a perfect picture on Google, which is not really the best thing. But that's what I had. So. I feel like drawing makes me in total control, independent from any other assets or resources, because it's just me and the empty page. What I draw is really, there's no limitation to it. That also helps me to put characters in any pose I want. I don't have to look for the perfect picture or something like this. It's really gives me this feeling of freedom when I work. And also allows me to work in a large variety of styles. I can just switch from cartoony stuff to more realistic shading, line work, all sorts of things. What I mean is I sometimes hear that a drawing is not really a good way to concept things for some reason, because well, on the other hand, sometimes it takes time and it won't give you the realistic feeling of textures and this sort of thing. But I stick to it, and this is just my choice of doing concept art. This was, I think, the original idea for this talk. But since it's a very somehow controversial topic, I just chose not to really talk about this. Yet here I am, because I'm just curious, what is this that I'm doing actually? I took some liberty to Google the definition for everyone. So an illustration is a visualization focused on subject more than form. The aim of an illustration is to decorate or expand textual information, such as story, by providing a visual representation. An illustration is a picture illustrating some sort of text, book, newspaper, or something like this. Mind blown. But the concept art, on the other hand, is a form of illustration used to convey an idea for use in films, video games, animation, comic books, or any other media before it is put into the final product. So I was wondering, I also found many other definitions, like the intent is important here. If you intend it to be a concept art, then it is a concept art, but if you put this in a book, then nobody would question that it is an illustration, yet I intended to make it a concept art. So I was thinking, if intent makes concept art, or actually the perception of a recipient or something like that. Really kind of a philosophical area right there. What I mean is, concept art doesn't have to tell a story, but it's helpful to keep the story in mind while designing. As I said, it gives you purpose, it makes it easier to make it unique. So what is it that I'm doing? Well, I like to think it's a little bit of both. And I also tried to come up with a new name for it, but the only thing that I came up with was a name for a kind of shady and illegal drug. So jury is still out on that. If you have any ideas, I'm open for suggestions. So, thank you.
Anyone has a question? Okay.
No questions. Oh.
It works. No, there are some questions, sorry.
Okay.
Hi, I have one. Tell me, do you start your drawing from drawing on paper or at the computer? Because what we see is digital arts,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So what's the start?
Well, I do start it on a computer, but I also sometimes start it on paper. It really depends. There is just two different purposes for me. On paper, I'm like really free, and when I don't know what to do, I'm just scribbling around and see what comes out of it. And I do that mostly in free time, and if I really come up with something nice, I take that and make it into some illustration or concept art. But usually for work, yeah, I start in a computer. I almost started learning to draw with the tablet, so that was kind of my first tool of the trade. So yes, I'm 99% a digital artist.
Yeah, okay, but technically, do you use kind of tracing? Do you sketch and then scan it and make it digital, or?
No, I usually just use the idea from the sketch. I redraw it. If I really like how it turned out on paper, I sometimes take a picture of it and then maybe use it and trace it on a computer, but it rarely happens. I usually just use it as a base and as an initial idea.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I wonder, like, after 8 or 10 hours of drawing, do you have like strength to do your own stuff at work or at home, or like, do you get like burned out ever? Okay, no question.
I really sometimes feel like I'm drawing all the time. I just like doing this, and it's funny how it works, because I feel like the more I have work to do, the more I'm actually working, the more commissions I get, the more work we have to do in our day job. The more ideas I have, I'm like really buzzing to get them out. So I sometimes really go home and just try to get things out of my head. So I draw more. I do feel burnt out sometimes, but it passes. It goes away after some time. So yeah, it's really about getting ideas out of my head. And since that never ends, like the ideas, so I kind of have to keep drawing. Yeah,
Okay,
there's
thank
no
you.
mystery to it. Thanks.
Since you're working at Six More Vodka, could you tell us like who your kind of like 3 biggest influences are, or like any of your mentors? Because when I look at your stuff, exception on the one character you drew, it was very Wes Burt.
I know Wes. And yes, he was, I think, I really love his stuff. I really love looking at his stuff. I also am working with other massive black people, Marko Djurdjevic. So I would also name him as my influence, because he taught me a lot. He taught me almost everything I know right now. There's also, I'm also working with a guy called Gerald Perel. He's also from a comic book industry background. So, yeah. And also Wes, probably. That's how I found out about Massive Black, I think, at some point. Who is the other? That was the other company that the guy set up way back in the US. and also doing, it was also an outsourcing 2D graphic studio that spawned tons of amazing art and artists. So yeah, those guys are my influences. Good,
Cool.
good eye.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Any more question from the audience? Oh.
Hi there. Amazing
Hi.
speech, by the way.
Thank you.
I have one question. I couldn't spot any kind of 3D technique on your concept art. And my question is, do you really need to have skills in 3D art for being such a concept artist?
I have no idea about 3D. I've never opened a 3D program in my life. So, what is important though, and it kind of goes back to back, is understanding of volumes. You kind of, when I'm drawing, I imagine a 3D volumes in my head. So sometimes feel like almost like a 3D type of work, because it really is all about how the lines overlap, how a volume looks in a perspective, in space. But no, 3D is not how to say that, not required for this type of work. It's just drawing, pencil, paper, tablet, really. I mean, you can, of course, you can do that sort of things. I'm just saying that I'm not. So.
Okay, and one more question. What would be your advice for a concept art that is kind of getting started, or is kind of a little bit advanced, or what would be your advice for getting into the industry, such as you did?
You really need to kind of get out there. I mean, I got my first jobs through, it was a Polish digital art forum. I was posting my works there, and people kind of noticed, and they started to talk to me and hire me to work for them. For Six More Vodka, I just found out that they are hiring, and I applied. And events like this also help, because it really makes a lot of difference when you can actually see that somebody exists, and the employer is so much more willing to hire you if he sees that you are like this normal dude that can communicate. So yeah, get a nice portfolio also.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Excuse me.
So I have a really quick question. Are you using some kind of references or references board, because you are using so many different styles? That's kind of awesome.
Thank you. Kind of awesome. No, thank you. I tend to look at a lot of images, but I really try to understand the decisions that come when somebody is like doing a super stylized animation, and then I'm hired to do that. I look for this sort of stuff, and I'm just trying to get to the core of it so that I understand how it was made, so that I can do it. Otherwise, it's just copying it. So that's what I've kind of learned over the years, because no two jobs that I was hired for was similar to each other. I was always jumping from one style to another. That's maybe somehow made me flexible or something like this. So my trick and the way I did it was like really trying to understand the decisions that were made doing this sort of thing, so I can emulate it somehow.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? More question, maybe from behind?
No?
No? We're good?
Pretty
Sorry,
good.
I'm just wondering, do you use some kind of photo references for the most realistic, photorealistic images? Because when I so few of your works. I was surprised when you told that you don't use photo mashups or collages, and I wonder, do you use photo as references or just your imagination?
It's actually interesting topic for me because a couple of years back when I started working professionally, I was so scared that I'm not doing good enough job, and realistic art was for me back then the highest form of art, the ultimate goal. Not anymore, but it's still cool to be able to do that. So I used tons of references. I used really a lot of pictures, a lot of photos, to the point where I couldn't really draw something unless I was looking at it. But then, especially when I started working at Six More Vodka, it kind of sped up a lot. Because what they taught me there was, well, first believing in my own skills, in my own imagination, but also really understanding what you are drawing. If you really understand the volumes, the design, the clothes, you will be able to draw it pretty realistic if you want to. And also that allowed me to broaden the range of the poses that I was using for characters, because I didn't have to find the picture with the exact same pose so that I can draw the character like that. I could just come up with that and draw it. So yeah, I used to use a lot of reference for that sort of thing. And also one of the projects that I worked on, the Platej Image animation, Another Day of Life, was a unique case of that, because I was literally handed pictures of people and I was supposed to draw them almost exactly like that. So yes, it was that project was extremely reference heavy, because I didn't really have to come up with that many things myself. I just had to translate them into the final look of the animation.
So those which come from your imagination are really awesome. I'm impressed, seriously.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
We need to end, so I would like to thank you again,
Thank
Monika. Maybe the applause.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.